Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle Dracula Horror Movie Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. And this week, we continue our musical horror retrospective with Joel Schumacher's 2004 adaptation of the one and only Andrew Lloyd Webber musical Phantom of the Opera, starring Gerard Butler and Emmy Rossum. Now, bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the Alex Van Helsing series from HarperCollins. With me are Drew Edwards, the creator of the long-running horror webcomic Halloween Man, which you can find at HalloweenMan.com. Say hello, Drew.
Character of Halloween Man, somewhat inspired by the Phantom of the Opera.
Excellent. That I did not know. And Tony Salvaggio, co-creator of the Victorian mech comic Clockworks, coming very soon from Humanoids, in English, finally, and also the manga Psychons from Right Stuff and Tokyopop, and lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and bassist for the Japanese rock band Pocari Shred, the Sleepless, the one and only Tony Salvaggio. Say hello.
Oh, that always sounds so crazy now that I hear that. I'm going to check myself out by hearing how much stuff I do. And
you gotta leave some stuff behind.
I know.
All right. And finally, and with much finery, and with color commentary, host of the new podcast Pod Moms and attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Okay. The Phantom of the Opera is a 2004 film adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's 1986 mega hit musical of the same name. Everybody in my high school who was a female was in love with this play, wanted to live in this play, really wished that their lives were essentially nothing but this play. This play was in turn based on the French novel Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. The Phantom, in this case, stars Gerard Butler in the title role, Emmy Rossum as Christine DaaÄ, as well as Patrick Wilson as Raoul, Miranda Richardson as Mme Giry, Minnie Driver as Carlotta, the comic relief, and Jennifer Ellison as Meg. So I want to go right into first impressions, and I know that Julia is raring to go with the first impressions, so we're going to go Julia, Drew, Tony, and then me. So, Julia, throw me your first impressions, Phantom of the Opera.
I have to say that have had the same thought watching this movie as I had in the Les Miserables, which is about Russell Crowe, which is why do they have Gerard Butler singing in this movie? Like it's the whole movie is about the Phantom of the Opera. It's a musical, so all you need is a good singer who can sing the Phantom of the Opera music. And they screwed that one thing up. It's like he's fine as a singer. He's a fine singer. I'm not saying he's a terrible singer, but he is not like the level of awesomeness that you need for this character. And it was so distracting to me because the rest of the film I actually like. I like bombastic music. I like the beautiful scenery. I like all the kind of over the top stuff. It just every time he came on, I just cringed, and I was like, "Why do they have this person sing?" And it's not even. I don't mind that they cast him. Why didn't they just have him dubbed like they do for Minnie Driver, or like they did in My Fair Lady, or whatever? Anyway, so that's my first impression.
All right. That's a great shot across the bow. Let's go to Drew, who I know is, I believe, a fan of this movie. Drew, let us know.
I am. I've taken my fair share of lumps for liking this movie over the years, particularly from fans of the stage play who point out, and rightfully so, that Gerard Butler is not as strong of a singer as Michael Crawford. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I like him, and I actually think he's the only real actor in the movie. Like Emily Rossum, who has a beautiful singing voice, is a mannequin anytime they call upon her to emote. Whereas
that's so pretty. Please continue.
When Gerard Butler says, "Now I will make war upon you both," you believe it. He's got this really great sort of animalistic Oliver Reed of the Hammer era quality about it. And the rest of the movie has this really lovely gothic look to it. Especially like my favorite scene is the scene in the cemetery because it's just gorgeous to look at.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Okay, Tony, your first impressions The Phantom of the Opera 2004.
I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of any production of it, but I think this is probably the one I'm least a fan of, even though it's really beautiful. Like, I'm not even sure why this one just doesn't. I mean, I think you and I saw it first at Banamathon.
That's right.
And then I saw it with my wife, and then this is the third time I'm seeing it, and I don't know. It's like the stage production's on PBS all the time, and it's really good. And I keep going like, I kind of would rather see that. And I've seen it for like here in Austin, actually in the theater, but it's in general, it's just not. I don't know. The Phantom just never really works for me. I think it's funny that you said all the girls in your high school wanted to be caught between a real jerk, possessive jerk, and a guy who's kind of not too far off from that. But I guess that's the nature of,
high school girls.
Yeah, there you go. But the movie's really beautiful. Everybody does a pretty good job. I agree with Drew that the acting, at least, Gerard Butler's a great actor, even if he's not quite I don't think he does a terrible job singing. It just, I don't know. If it wasn't for this podcast, I doubt I would watch this. I kind of was tempted to just pretend I was going to watch this and then watch the Lon Chaney version since it's on Netflix, and just go well, the black and white parts, the black and white was great. Lon Chaney was awesome, and you just be like, and just keep talking like that. And no matter how many times you mention the musical, I would do that.
That would be funny. That would be great.
It's, I don't know. There's a lot going for it, but it really falls flat for me. So,
you could get thank you very much, Tony. And the funny thing is, you could get like, I don't know, you could get Rain to like do a Giorgio Moroder and probably like score a whole soundtrack.
We actually we were talking about that as we were watching it. Actually,
it's only like 50 minutes long. I mean, it's not a very long movie. The silent movie with Lon Chaney.
Maybe that's one of our next projects.
You could probably out Giorgio Moroder too.
Well, I guarantee you, I can give you better sounds than the ones they continuously use, because the sounds are from the 80s, or they feel like it, like the keyboards, but they can't change it because that's what people love, and that drives me crazy. Not that I want.
Are you talking now about the versions of the 1925 Phantom, or are you talking about Moroder's Metropolis?
This particular, the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh yes.
Andrew Lloyd Webber's keyboards that they have to play, because we went and saw it in the theater here in town, and I'm just like, good grief. I know people love this, but it's driving me crazy.
But I have a feeling about that. I mean, there are a couple of options there. Anytime you have a piece that's written at a certain time and uses certain kinds of synthesizers, right? And then, so 15 years later, it sounds very awkward. And so you always have the option of rearranging that music with different kinds of keyboards and stuff. But the problem is, in my mind, usually another 15 or so years after that, you really prefer to just go back to what it originally sounded like.
I mean, I'm not calling for like there's cheesy 80s keyboard stuff, pop music, that I still like.
Sure.
I'm not asking, tons of 80s pop music that I just enjoy. They don't have to update, but something about this one just drives me. Yeah, the 80s keyboards and the electric guitar. Good grief. Like that.
Well, maybe it's just because it's like slammed up against this period Gothic horror setting that it seems especially anachronistic.
It is weird.
Kind of, but it's so. I mean, it's cheesy in a way that some of the cheesiest music that I love is not cheesy, and I don't know. I haven't put my finger on it, but. Man, it does. So I want to actually save the cheesiness and the whole look and feel and sound as something that we can dig a little bit deeper into in a bit. The first, and thank you very much. First impression that I have here. Here's my strongest memory of the Phantom of the Opera. Tony and I watched this at probably like 3:00 in the morning during a 24-hour movie marathon, and I was in the lobby right after watching it, and I was standing there
having a drink with Eli Roth, the guy who directed Hostel. And he was appalled, offended, shaking with rage. He couldn't believe he had been forced to watch this movie. This is the man who we had just watched a film where this woman was drawn and quartered, a man whose most famous movie features a girl getting her eye burned out with an acetylene torch, and he felt like he had been molested by being forced to watch Joel Schumacher's Phantom of the Opera. This is the you know what it takes to appall Eli Roth? Phantom of the Opera. I mean, he could not understand why someone would make a movie like this. And that has always stuck with me ever since then. I was like, wow, what is horror exactly? You know, and clearly he doesn't think that this is it. He was like, I'm here to see some horror, and I don't know why I have to sit through this.
It's like when Judge Death gets scarecrowed in the Judge Dredd Batman, and his horror is fuzzy bunnies and like plush animals. Eli
really
Roth.
He was as offended by this movie as that other audience at another Butt-Dumathon was offended by the live birth. I mean, he just couldn't hack it, and I just thought that has stuck with me ever since, because this movie is to some extent a giant love, and you know, maybe it fails because of certain things, you know, maybe Gerard Butler is not the guy, but I love this movie kind of for what it is, because this movie is like the sincerest giant moving version of one of those posters you get at Target of like roses and masks that there ever was. This is like a huge, giant, skyward moving version of like a freshman girl's wall. I love this movie, you know, but that's what it is. You know, there's you just wallow in the in the crazy like roses and masks and candles and gondolas. I'm so I love it. But so that's my impression of it right off the top, is that you kind of have to see this movie. I think if you're a horror fan, it's worth seeing this movie to see. A movie. It's the only movie I can think of that's really, really like this. You know, that has this much. It just sort of glops on all of that sort of. It's not even goth. It's more like Broadway goth. Or,
sure. Well,
you know?
We asked why. Like, I forgot. I think it was my brother-in-law who was like, "Why does he need like 20,000 francs a month?"
Yes.
You know, the salary. And I was like, "Well, he's got to pay for all those candles."
Yeah, those candles.
And all the roses. And all the roses.
Go broke with matches alone.
Candles and roses.
That's right.
Hey, those toupees are not growing on trees, people.
Yeah.
That's true too.
Well, and he's got a good wardrobe, actually.
Yeah, when he drags Christine down, there's a point where he hypnotizes Christine and drags her down below, and his world is kind of like something out of a mixture of Pirates of the Caribbean ride and the I don't know, Wrapped Around Your Finger video. Right. It's just fantastic. Okay.
Oh, man, it would make a great Billy Idol video, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. You know what?
Yeah, we were saying that it looked like an 80s video, the whole thing.
Well, it looks actually to me like a Meatloaf video. The whole
yeah.
Can you dig?
Supposedly he was in the running.
Well, yeah, so let's talk about the Phantom for a sec. Literally the Phantom. The central character of this whole picture is Gerard Butler as the Phantom of the Opera. And we should talk about the Phantom as a character who's been in a lot of movies. But this is a singing part, and it's the central singing part of this entire show. And the Phantom of the Opera is a character who, in every movie we've seen, we just talked about a remake of this literally last week. In every movie we've seen, the Phantom is a musical genius who has a muse, who is a beautiful girl who works at the opera or at something like the opera, and in whichever movie you're watching. And he wants to ensure his own immortality of his work by ensuring that she becomes a superstar. And that's all wrapped up together. His own, vengeance on the people who hurt him or mocked him, and also making her a star and being her savior, and therefore gaining her love and all that stuff. And here, it's played. The Phantom is played by Gerard Butler, the guy who played Dracula 2000 and was in.
Which I have to say,
yeah.
Does that make him the in the lead for most portrayals of classic monsters by any modern actor?
Wow, that's a great question.
But I don't know, but that is. It says in the Wikipedia article that the Dracula 2000 is why he was chosen for why they asked him to audition for this role. But I was thinking the whole time I was watching it that it should have been Hugh Jackman, and apparently Hugh Jackman was actually considered for it, but he was doing Van Helsing, which makes me think that if we could go back in time and just switch them, then Gerard Butler as Van Helsing and Hugh Jackman as the Phantom, I would just be so much happier because
I think they would both take that deal. I mean, I don't think we're Gerard Butler would not have been hurt by Van Helsing, and Hugh Jackman probably would have been.
I think Gerard Butler would have been. I think Gerard Butler would have been hurt by Van Helsing. He wasn't like Hugh Jackman. By the time Van Helsing came out, was already a star because of the X-Men movies, whereas Gerard Butler had only played Dracula. His only real big movie was playing Dracula in a B movie.
Yeah.
And this was his kind of first. Honestly, this is his first kind of A-list movie, and I don't doubt that he probably got 300 because he had been in this.
I don't think that anybody got anything out of Dracula 2000.
Yeah,
that's surprising to me.
Well, I don't like him. Yeah. I don't like him in Dracula 2000, and I
don't like
him
anything
here.
about Dracula 2000.
He's not. I cannot imagine that you would cast him from. I mean, I'm sure it happened.
That's what it says in the article. It says that that he had seen him in Dracula 2000.
Who, Schumacher?
So, yeah.
I believe it. I just am amazed. I mean, and people who cast see things that the rest of us don't see. But the guy, when he plays Dracula 2000...
It says to quote Wikipedia, director Joel Schumacher had been impressed with Gerard Butler's performance in Dracula 2000.
Yeah.
However, maybe I need to rewatch Dracula 2000 because I just don't like him in that movie, and I really enjoy him in this. I will be the one defending him throughout this podcast. In fact,
please don't suggest watching that movie for this podcast.
No. For myself, for me, myself, and I won't put everybody else through that.
Thank you.
There's a bunch of movies that we can force ourselves to watch before we have to watch Dracula 2000.
Yeah, that's on the lower tier of Dracula movies for sure.
Yeah.
There are many worse. Like, don't get me wrong, but that's not a movie I ever.
Yeah, there's no particular reason to go back to it.
Anyway,
I do like. You know what? Not to go into a full-blown review of that movie, but I do like Christopher Plummer as Van Helsing in that.
I like the flashback to all the paintings of him being Judas, even though it doesn't make any sense that he's Judas.
I guess that looks.
We should have never said Dracula 2000. That's going to do. We just derail the entire.
All right, never mind. Sorry that we mentioned Dracula 2000. Okay. Well, I think we were saying that this movie looks like one of those posters that you get at Target. That it looks like a Nagel print. I think this movie looks like one giant Meatloaf video. This movie. Okay. And that brought us to, we were talking about Phantom, and Meatloaf probably should have played him. And Meatloaf actually could have done this stuff. Can you imagine Meatloaf?
No woman in their right mind is going to be drawn to Meatloaf. Like, Meatloaf has a wonderful singing voice.
So let's talk about that, because here's the thing. I want to know, do you think she's drawn, I don't think she's drawn to him because he's handsome. I think she's drawn to him because he's got hypnotic spell on her, or because she just feels sorry for him. It's like a Beauty and the Beast thing where she's
so let's talk about how the Phantom works. So is the Phantom, as Julia put the question, is the Phantom magic or Batman? In other words, is he able to...
Yeah.
No, but that's not
the magic of Batman thing is a different question. That has more to do with all of the stuff that he can do. I'm talking about the attraction. Is it hypnotic, or is it her being just kind of?
It is not because he is handsome. That much is true. It is not because Gerard Butler is handsome. I really believe this. She is not drawn to him because Gerard Butler is handsome. She's drawn to him because he is the angel of music who has taught her everything and been there since her father died.
And I'm sure that there are plenty of people who are attracted to Meatloaf. I mean, the fact is, I think it's just that it has to do with, the charisma in that case. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about and by the way, I just want to add before I forget, that I think that what they did to his face for when he takes off the mask, it was so silly to think that would be horrific enough for like an opera audience to scream or belly to scream. I mean, it's just like it looks like he got burned or something. It doesn't look deformed at all.
Yeah, it was very disappointing. But it was so underwhelming that you almost every Phantom of the Opera story contains a reveal where Christine pulls the mask off. When he kind of feels like he can trust her, and then she's overwhelmed by her curiosity, and then later she wants to just bring everything to a halt by showing other people, but she pulls the mask off, and that reveals his hideousness. And it's always, honestly, it's always disappointing, but they've established in this case that the Phantom is deformed from an early, so he's congenitally deformed. And so his face, at least the half of it covered by the plastic mask, is supposed to be so horrendous that you doubt like whether God loves this child. And they don't deliver that at all. Where they pull off his mask later on, and yeah, it looks like he burned himself a long time ago, and he doesn't even look that bad right now.
They didn't do near. I think they probably, because Gerard Butler is such a good-looking man, they didn't want to take too much away from that, and because of that, I think they really did kind of subdue what could have been a really clever makeup effect.
Yeah,
he could have
what
looked like
they did
Jonah
in
Hex.
Skyfall with Javier Bardem when he takes out the mouthpiece. I mean, that looks really horrific. That was
sure.
Like that would have been awesome.
Or think of Jonah Hex, who has an enormous hole in his face, so that you can see into the skull and all that stuff. That's he should really be. He should be deformed in that sense that it's really difficult to deal with. No, you got nothing like that. But it's so confusing that you almost wish that they had gone the full way, and there's literally nothing wrong with his face. He's just convinced that there's something wrong with it.
He's just insane.
I would have been okay with that. I would have been okay with the notion that he is convinced that there is something wrong with his face, even though there is not. But no. But then
they wouldn't have to have the story of him being a circus freak or whatever he was.
No, true. That's true.
I think that I mean, honestly, for a cinematic reveal, they should have just made him horrific. And yeah. I mean, the Lon Chaney Sr. Phantom is definitely, I think, the showstopper. But unfortunately, it covers his entire face, so you don't have the neat half mask that has become so iconic of the character since stage
Well, it's
play
a quarter mask. The Lon Chaney face covered basically everything but his lower lip, so that he had that Lon Chaney had a really kind of creepy mask that hung over the upper part of his face and had a little lace veil that hung over the mouth. If I remember correctly, it hung over the mouth a little bit. And then she pulls it away, and man, that was a great face. The other thing of note here is that I don't think they establish why Lon Chaney's Phantom looks the way he does. In the book and in the musical here, he is deformed, and in a lot of the movies, he is disfigured in some kind of an accident or in some kind of a crime that involves him being a genius. And that's what ended up happening in the Phantom of the Paradise that we last week. Is he's betrayed by the record company and winds up being burned in a record press. So yeah, I mean, I like the story here that he's deformed. I just sort of I don't know.
Then the other question I have was, is he, and I think the end tells us the answer to this, but is he more of an evil monster, or is he just kind of a sad, pathetic wounded person who's turned to darkness but really is good inside?
I think that one's really clear. I mean, I think he is. I feel terrible that he makes all the choices that he does, because the Phantom, he's a genius and he wants to be with Christine, but he does have this problem that all the Phantoms seem to have, which is that he kills thoughtlessly. I think that's even what Christine says, is he just kind of kills people left and right without giving much thought to it. So, he's certainly kind of a sociopath.
Well, yes, but then I
don't think he's a sociopath, because a sociopath feels no emotion.
Right.
He's deeply insane. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, but he lets Raoul and Christine go at the end, and he didn't have to do that. So
he feels bad in the end. He does. He realizes that he's lost, and he feels like there's nothing else for him to do here. He loves Christine and he wants her to go on. There's a lot of great humor. I love the business with the Phantom, writing his letters to the management of the opera, demanding that they pay him a salary so that he can keep in candles, like Tony said. I like the absolute best part of any Phantom of the Opera is when he comes out during the mask, and in Lon Chaney he comes out wearing that killer. There's a masquerade ball that happens halfway through, and in Lon Chaney he comes out in that killer Mask of the Red Death outfit, and I believe that he comes out in a nearly identical outfit in the Broadway show with the big skull mask. I don't know for sure. It's been so long since I've seen the Broadway show that I literally don't remember if the way he looks in the masquerade ball in the movie is the way he looked on stage. But on stage, when the Phantom finally reveals himself to everybody because he walks out during a masquerade ball, he's wearing this sort of wonderful night out version of his normal Phantom outfit, and it's a big red Toreador outfit with a half mask that is has skull ridges. So it's still the Mask of the Red Death. He comes dressed as the Red Death, but it's a stylized version, for this musical movie.
Right.
And that's wonderful. I mean, it's really neat that this movie keeps sort of paying homage to all these other versions. Have you guys seen any of the others? I mean, has anybody seen the 40s or the 60s?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which do you recommend? And I say that as somebody who hasn't watched. I was just looking at trailers for the 40 and the 43 and the 62.
I'm a big fan of the Terrence, even though it doesn't follow the book very closely, and has kind of an abrupt ending. I'm a big fan of the Terrence Fisher version with Herbert Lom.
Terrence Fisher, who directed Horror of Dracula, and Herbert Lom, who was in the
Captain Nemo.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He was Captain Nemo.
He was Captain Nemo in Island, Mysterious Island, right? Yes.
Mysterious Island.
He's also Van Helsing in Count Dracula by Jess Franco. Anyway, so he's the Phantom. Yes, I've seen that, but it's been literally probably since I was in high school. So I want to go back and watch that. I want to go back and watch the 40s one. Why does this story keep getting remade anyway? I mean, we've talked a little bit about what the story is, because the story is the Phantom itself. If you got his story, you got the story. But of all things in the world, why does this one French play keep getting made into new movies?
I think the character is wonderfully complex. I mean, he's kind of the villain, but you root for him anyway because he is so wounded. And Raoul, honestly, not much of a hero at the end of the day. And there's all these bits. You bring up Batman. There's all these bits that have been filtered into other characters that you can instantly relate to. I mean, I even said it myself, when I started coming up with my own sort of monster superhero, one of the very first characters that I looked at was the Phantom of the Opera.
Mm. Yeah. So I guess, I guess there's a great deal of fantasy there, the idea of having a secret admirer that only you can hear, who's, whispering things and helping you get better at what you do. It's full of big dramatic stuff that doesn't have much to do with our everyday lives. I mean, but it's a wonderful fantasy. This notion that, I don't know, that if you were going to be the lead actor or the lead actress at your college, the idea that might be somebody in the theater who's like whispering to you and teaching you how to do your monologue better, and that there could be this secret angel who would help you. Except, of course, that it all goes bad. That's the great part, is that the secret angel turns out to be crazy, and you have to sort of exorcise the secret angel. I don't know. Clearly, it keeps coming back because there's only a few classics in the public domain like this. There's a lot of public domain books. There's thousands of public domain books. And yet somehow Phantom of the Opera just keeps coming back, like Captain Nemo and like Dracula and,
Frankenstein.
Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, and Frankenstein and Holmes. There's not a very big list out of all those. There's only a few that, The Invisible Man is not even in, no, actually the Invisible Man's available now. So I'm sorry, I forgot for a moment. Tarzan is still copyrighted, so you can't use him yet. I don't know. Talking about all this, I want to go write a Phantom of the Opera adaptation. Come to think of it, so there's something there. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit, because we talked about the casting of the Phantom and Gerard Butler and whether or not we think he's a good idea. We've talked a little bit about...
Well, I still say they could have just dubbed him, and that would have been fine. I mean,
I hate it when they do that, though. Like, honestly, like, Minnie Driver, like, I wish they would have gotten anybody but Minnie Driver because she doesn't sing her own parts. Like, that really,
yeah, but she was so funny.
I mean,
she's not funny. She's obnoxious.
But I'm forgiving of that. I mean, look, honestly, do you think that we're so different that we couldn't accept, like, the Audrey Hepburn scenario where, Audrey Hepburn didn't sing?
I don't like My Fair Lady because of that.
So in other words, you would have preferred that they had cast Julie Andrews, who was doing the role on Broadway.
Yeah.
Which
well,
makes sense.
Hugh Jackman should have been doing it, or they also said that they considered John Travolta, who would have been an interesting choice.
He would have been a very interesting choice.
Or Antonio Banderas, but I'm not. I've seen Evita, and I don't think Antonio Banderas is all that much better than Gerard Butler at singing. But I think John Travolta would have been interesting, or Hugh Jackman. But I just really I just don't like the singing because it is so. I mean, if he was just singing a quiet like love song, it would have been fine. But that whole da 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 da, it's just supposed to be so like.
The
thing at the end.
For a moment, I want to explain why his singing works for me, and even though I fully understand why a lot of people were disappointed. I feel like his voice kind of sounds like, at times he sounds very good, and then he suddenly goes off, and it has this almost quality of like a broken harpsichord. Like, that's all I can think about, and for some reason, that works for me because he's the Phantom of the Opera.
I just realized I was singing an excerpt from Les Mis.
I know. I was going to say.
That's not the right song. Never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
But you had the same observation, Julia, with the point where they do the big crane shot, where the Phantom realizes that he has lost really to the boy, and so he climbs up on a gargoyle like Batman, and he says, I can't remember, but it's basically, you'll rue the day you didn't do all I asked of you. And and the camera goes whoosh up into the sky as he hits this big, broad note.
Yeah,
except for that.
Now I can't think. The thing is, because I was watching the Oscars, now I have the Les Mis song stuck in my head, so I can't remember how the.
It's all right. But it's all I ask of you again. It's an All I Ask of You reprise. I can hear what Drew is saying, and I think it's fair, because I'm actually one of these people who likes this movie. Because I don't think the Phantom does the performance that I would totally like from him, but there's so much here that's I'll give it a pass. Well, do you think, Drew, the way things are going now, I think it's possible we might see another one of these in another 15 years. I mean,
sure.
Annie's been shot twice. There's no particular reason that somebody might not decide to just try it again. And I mean, we've seen Spider-Man's been done twice in about 10 years. So it's completely conceivable that somebody could decide to reshoot Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera.
Well, a lot of people were, I'm defending this movie, but a lot of people were extremely let down by it. I have no doubt that they will go back to this well, and even if they didn't, I'm sure somebody would just do a straight horror movie version of the Phantom of the Opera, because they can't seem to stop making those either. And
God, that's another question I had for you guys. You said, hey, take a look at the 62 version. I'd love to take another look at the 43 version. And so I'll probably watch those back-to-back pretty soon. But I have zero in any version of Phantom of the Opera that's not this one, that's post, 1962. I just am not interested. Seems to me they made, two new versions.
Gary Argento version, huh?
What, you mean opera? I mean,
no, he did a, or was it Fulci? But one of those Euro horror guys did Phantom of the Opera with Julian Sands a few years back.
Oh, by the way, it's Music of the Night is the one I was thinking of. No, the music of the night. And he's like, no, it's a flat note. That's what bugs me. It's a flat note, and it needs to be, have some vibrato, and it just needs to be bigger than the note. But anyway, I don't know any of these other versions, so this is actually the only version I've seen on film, I think.
So, okay, maybe I'll check out Julian Sands. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like it's actually merely a prejudice. I'm just realizing as I say it out loud. There's no reason for me to reject a movie just because it was made post 1965. And yet, I'm basically going, I'm not interested if it was made. if it was made, after the period when the MPAA started rating stuff, I'm not interested.
Hey, is Tony still with us? I haven't heard from Tony in a while.
Yeah, I'm just listening.
I
think that didn't get really. I think that Phantom. I didn't hear anything good about the one you're talking about. So I don't know. You may be right in that. I don't think I heard anything good about that particular Phantom.
There was also one with Robert Englund, if I recall, where.
There was. Yeah. That one is really bad.
Okay.
but Jason, you're missing Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Well, that's true. I'm also forgetting about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which featured a Phantom.
True, but Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. I'm surprised.
Kiss Meets the Phantom. I'd love to see Kiss Meets the Phantom again, especially because I love the voice that they dub in for Peter Criss. He was awesome. He was he had the strongest accent you ever heard. It was like, no powers. If you take away our amulets, we have no powers. I love that guy. Hello, Austin. I got to watch Kiss Meets the Phantom. That's a Paul Stanley
impression. Jason went to see Kiss in Austin, and he said it was really shocking to have Paul Stanley come out and be like, "Hello, Austin."
Paul Stanley played the Phantom of the Opera.
No
Did
way.
he really?
God,
he was in one of the stage versions.
Now, I would love to see Paul Stanley play Phantom of the Opera. I think that would be awesome. That would be fantastic. But I still, truly, in all honesty, I think that Meatloaf would have been good at this.
Well, it's sad that the original stage the cast was supposed to be when Andrew Lloyd Webber first was going to do the film, he was going to have it be Michael Crawford and Sarah Brightman, but then he got divorced from Sarah Brightman, so he was like, never mind. Which I'm they're really sad about that because it would have been really good. But.
Well, I mean, a lot of those things happen where the golden moment just gets missed, and Yeah.
This probably should have been made like in the late '80s or the early '90s when the stage play was really huge.
Well, that's when they were looking at it. It was 1989. That's when he was looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about that? What do you guys think about like the sets and the scenery and all that? I think the sets are really, really cool. And by the way, we were talking about the fire in the theater. Apparently, they actually burned the theater down to make it look authentic.
Wow.
The fire. It's an actual fire. And
it's
also the scene where the chandeliers come up out of the water. The way they did that was they actually had these wicks that would relight they would light when they hit the air, but it only worked one time, so they only got the one shot, and then that was it.
But it's beautiful. I mean, seriously, that stuff. I think those sequences are enough to make this movie worth watching. Is for these crazy, because if people can to this day say, hey, you must watch The Fearless Vampire Killers because of the masquerade thing. If you dig that, you've got to enjoy watching Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah,
I mean, this thing.
The beautiful chandelier scene. I love the chandelier scene. It's a Swarovski chandelier, and it's just so pretty. And then they had like several versions, so they could do the dramatic scene where he just cuts it loose and it kind of cuts through the theater. The whole thing. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of physically pretty things. The masquerade scene when they do the dance. The
silver fans. Well, and there's this scene that it opens with, and I remember Tony and I watched this, and I was struck by how awesome it was the first time I saw it, which is the framing device where they begin at the sale, at the estate sale at the opera house, and they have the big damaged chandelier, and as they pull it back, everything starts moving back in time. You know, the dust starts coming off of all the furniture, and the fires. You know, the footlights start lighting. That gives me chills. Are you kidding me?
I mean, cool that they also change the color, so the memories. Everybody's memories are so rosy that that's in color.
Yes.
And they're faded, kind of when they're old. All that's in black and white. Like there's a lot of really great just choices.
Yes.
And the sets are beautiful. Like Drew said, the graveyard scene just looks fantastic. Again, Phantom for somehow being a genius allows you, like, not only are you just because you're a genius, you're an awesome singer, and you learn swordplay somehow.
Yes.
Like you're an awesome, like just being a genius. Who knows what we never called Albert Einstein out to do?
Yeah.
He just being a genius, you do it. But it's
funny you should mention that, Tony.
Beautiful movie. Like, I mean, it looks great. Which is another reason why I'm kind of sad that I'm so ambivalent. Like, it just never really.
But you were like that with Van Helsing, which also has great sets. So I mean, that's
I'm less than ambivalent about Van Helsing. It's a terrible movie. I could see that. I could never see that again. I would be perfectly happy. That would be great. If my life if that never ever came up, I would be perfectly happy.
I could watch this movie with my girls, and I would be totally happy to watch the whole thing with them. I think they'd love it. You know, I think this movie is pretty good at being what it is. By the way, I just want to talk briefly about Joel Schumacher, because it occurs to me this is at least the second Joel Schumacher movie that we've done. Yep. By the way, this is our 48th episode. We've got 2 more, and that'll be 50.
Holy cow.
So, yes, we did. Joel Schumacher, people will never, ever, ever forgive him for what happened with the Batman series under his
And they shouldn't.
And maybe they shouldn't. But the thing is, he did do other stuff, and some of it was pretty good. You know, like I love St. Elmo's Fire. I thought 8mm was a pretty good thriller. But he also did Lost Boys, which we talked about. And Flatliners. Yeah, Flatliners, which all I remember about Flatliners is I wanted that duster that Keanu Reeves wore. But when you think about Lost Boys, remember the whole sequence where Michael's like drinking vampire wine and eating what he thinks are grubs, and they're hanging out in the underground hotel, and there's dripping candles and stuff? That you could like supercut back and forth between that sequence and some of the underground layer stuff here, and they look almost identical.
That's true.
You know, it's amazing to me. It's really as though, and when you consider when Lost Boys was made, I think that Schumacher has a sensibility when he's doing a movie like this that is, you know, a little bombastic like this, and so he was built to do Phantom of the Opera. I mean, to some extent, I think he's, you know, Tony was just pointing out how many awesome things about it. I think Schumacher was great for this.
No, I agree with this. Again, I really don't know what happened with Batman and Robin because
he was trying to do. The problem with his Batman movies is the studio wanted to dial back from the weirdness of the Tim Burton one. Let's face it. You know, the Danny DeVito, like, as creepy as Heath Ledger is as the Joker, he is matched.
No, you're right.
And by Danny DeVito as the Penguin.
Well, say what it is.
What I like,
the darkness. They didn't like the darkness
weirdness when you have Arnold Schwarzenegger just.
No, you're right.
Ham-tastic.
But it's not about. Drew didn't get it quite. It's not the weirdness. It's the darkness. The studio didn't like how sort of dark and unfriendly those movies were.
So
but go ahead.
Let's have them skate.
Yes,
oh
precisely. That's the direction
you know,
to go.
I mean, what can I say? You know, the 60s. I guess it's probably one of those like, hey, well, people liked the other Batman.
Yeah, they went full circle.
Try to diffuse, like, sometimes you can't get rid of a bomb. Maybe that was it. But
all the way back to Batman 66 is where they went. They literally just.
But it's a bad imitation because I mean the 60s Batman is so specific to its time, and to try and ape that after audience, like, I think it would be wrongheaded for somebody to go back and try and redo Tim Burton, just like I think it would be wrongheaded for people to go back and try and ape Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
You know, you have to kind of have your own take on things.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about now?
He does a lot of movies that are really good.
I've got lost between Batman and Chris Nolan. And I don't know.
Wait. Hang on just a second. You just inspired me, Julia. Someday I've got to take, once we do our 50th episode, I really want to figure out a way to digitize this whole thing and somehow cut, like, favorite quotes from the whole thing. And you actually saying along various episodes, wait, can I just get us back on topic, or what are we talking about now? Any one of those things will be great. Okay,
yeah.
So
I mean, he's done lots of, like, I even thought Phone Booth was kind of cool.
Yes. No, Joel Schumacher's fantastic. I think people didn't dig what he did with Batman. I think and the fact that people are constantly mentioning the nipples on the Batsuit means to me that there's even a certain amount, dare I say it, of a little bit of homophobia in people's dislike for Joel Schumacher.
You know, Joel Schumacher, you know, when he's allowed to be also, there's a little bit of kinkiness, and it's even a little bit on display here because Christine thinks this is her father, yet there is still this sort of sexual magnetism.
Oh, yeah. No, she's totally turned on by him. And so I don't know what that's about.
Extra creepiness is she was actually 16 when everybody else was in their 30s.
Yes.
Like, in the movie.
Emmy Rossum is 16?
Yeah. They did.
I think we should talk about Emily Rossum for a little bit.
It's Emmy. Well, she's pretty.
She was a singer, Jason. You had said that she didn't have singing experience, but the only one who didn't have singing experience was Gerard Butler.
Okay, so she had some singing experience. Mm-hmm. So I think she's very pretty. I was struck when I watched this by how she's just literally one of the prettiest girls I've seen in a movie in a long time. I mean,
I don't even think she's pretty. I think she's my least favorite part of this movie.
Really? You don't think she's pretty?
Yes.
I'm not saying I think she's beautiful.
She's a twig.
Say that again? I missed it.
She's a twig. She has a face like a mannequin.
I don't know. I mean, no, you're right. She's young. She's skinny, but she has this very fresh face. They've got her makeup extremely lightweight. She almost has freckles. You know, she seems like a very pretty girl. She's
definitely
vulnerable,
but I just I would all the talks about recasting Gerard Butler. I really wish that they would have had somebody who could emote with their face a little better. She's got a good singing. She's got a good singing voice, but she just has one facial expression through the entire movie. She kills this movie more than any of Gerard Butler's plot notes. I like everything going on around her. I just can't.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I don't know. I didn't feel that way. I thought that she's perfectly good as this person that the Phantom adores. I also felt as though the Phantom doesn't really have to be as amazing as the Phantom thinks she is. She's just this person that he's become. Infatuated is not the word. He has placed all of his identity on her, in a sense. And we see that time and time again. That's what's so great about these stories. But you're right. That's no excuse. If you don't think she's the right person, everything I just said is no excuse for casting the wrong person. You know, in theory, you want to cast the most beautiful person, the best voice, everything. But I think she's great. I really enjoy her. I like her voice, and she seems like the perfect innocent ingenue. But having said all that, you know, I mean, Christine doesn't really do a great deal. I mean, she's not a very active heroine here. In fact, most of the action is done by the Count, although she does a couple of the really key things, like ripping off the Phantom's mask. So, you know, she's not completely passive, but she's not as active as you might hope. Listen, we should probably give our final thoughts and then come around for endorsements, because we're coming up on the end of the hour. Go ahead.
We didn't do favorite songs last week. I think I would like to throw that out there, that we should bring that back this week.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Favorite
Absolutely.
Song?
Favorite songs. So do you have let's go back in the same order we went, going, what was it, Julia, Drew, Tony, and then me. Do your final thoughts and also your favorite song, and then we'll come around for the endorsements. So, Julia, do you have a favorite song? And I'd love to hear your final thoughts on Phantom of the Opera.
Well, one thing I didn't mention that about I guess final thoughts is I loved the whole back and forth in time thing. I thought that was really interesting. I thought, though, that their old people makeup was just horrible. I don't understand why it's still so hard. I mean, to capture that. I mean, I'm not. Hey, I don't do that. I don't make masks. I don't do makeup, whatever. So I don't know. I'm sure it is hard, but it seems like in this day and age we should be able to achieve that look by now. You know what I mean? I don't. We can make these wax dummies that look exactly like.
Tony, you're the resident animator. Can you explain what the deal is? Like, is this an uncanny valley problem where
I think
basically?
So. I mean, it's been done well. It's about budget, and I mean, anytime you do that, though, you have an actor who's gonna. I mean, they're gonna be down for like half a day to a day, just putting on makeup. And there's some artists, I'm sure, who are more skilled than others. I think it is an uncanny valley thing. I mean. Oof, we just watched.
And you want to explain the uncanny valley for the audience, just so that.
Well, the closer to actual realism, the less suspension of disbelief we can have. So that if something is really close to realism, but not quite, we may not know exactly what it is that's making it off to us, but we're trained. Our brain goes, "Whoa, that is just weird and creepy," as opposed to like a doll where you can kind of project your own emotions and, you know, everything onto it, and so it's less like weird. Like, oh, I get that. It's not that real, and so I can believe it doing all these things. And I think that's kind of where old people makeup goes. I just watched Prometheus again, and I'm like, oh man, for real, like that. Why the rest of the movie looks so beautiful?
Yeah.
Why that? Like what happened? And again, you know, it's like Julia was saying. Like, I mean, there a lot goes into that, And so I'm not even sure. I'm sure there's some people who could probably even school me on it. But it has worked in some movies. It's just, it's a lot harder than it seems.
I'll give you one for instance. I think that Leah Thompson's 30-year-plus makeup for
No. Back to the Future?
Back to the Future.
No, it's funny, but it's not good. It's not good.
You didn't believe it? I
No.
completely believed her makeup, that she looked like she was 46 instead of.
You need to watch it again. You'll see that it's not.
I'm thinking with Julia. I thought so, and then I saw it again, and I was kind of like, not as good as I remembered, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, but I do want to do my favorite song before y'all move on.
Okay.
I guess I would say the title track. I mean, I would say Phantom of the Opera is a great song. The problem is there's a lot of the songs I think would have been really better if they weren't sung as poorly as they were. Because Music of the Night is a beautiful piece, but I'm just, like I said, I was so distracted by the badness of it. Huh?
Oh, outstanding. So is that your final thought as well?
I already gave my final thought, which is just that I already said everything except that I wanted to say that the old people makeup was terrible.
Oh, okay. All right. Drew, your final thoughts and also your favorite song, either way that you want to do it.
Well, my favorite song is kind of a weird pick, because my favorite thing in the whole movie is kind of the reprise of Masquerade that the Phantom does at the very end. On a whole, like if you're going to talk like big production numbers, it probably would still be Masquerade, because it's just kind of epitomizes what the whole thing is about, and it's also just it's visually very cool. My final thoughts, I like this movie. I don't understand why it gets, I don't think it's perfect. It's probably not as definitive of a production of this material as some people would like it. But, there's a lot here to be liked, and I think by denying yourself that, you are missing out on a very, very entertaining cinematic experience.
Well said. Excellent. Tony, do you have any final thoughts and your favorite song here?
Yeah, I mean, the movie's beautiful. The singing is done well, even, I think everybody does a good job, but for some reason it never really sticks with me. I mean, but that, that's me too. The Phantom of the Opera, especially, I thought, well, maybe when I see it live. Maybe, this PBS production, even though I think the PBS production is the best one.
Is that a PBS filming of the Broadway show?
Yeah, and I think it's on Netflix. It's got Sarah Brightman in it. Okay. It's done really well. If I'm not mistaken, it's all original cast, but I could be wrong about that. We usually leave it on that if we're switching through channels. So I've seen it in pieces tons of times, but it's never really my favorite. I definitely didn't think it's the worst thing ever, but I'm really ambivalent. I wouldn't watch it. I don't know if I'd watch it again. Just it doesn't hold anything for me, but it looks really great. It's not by fault of any one piece. I'm just really ambivalent about the whole thing. It doesn't really. And as far as like favorite songs, it's kind of the same way. Like they're all good. They're all catchy. I mean, I'm in a band. I'll never make as much money probably off of my band as Andrew Lloyd Webber has made. So what do I know about music, right? Like, I mean, there's plenty of things that are popular, and I understand why they're popular,
Tony,
even if they aren't for me. So,
Tony, at the end of the day, look, I like the music in this, but Andrew Lloyd Webber also made Cats.
Huh?
Hey, I like Cats.
I like Cats all right too. Like I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's extremely music and musicals are extremely subjective, so it's really tough. This doesn't do it for me, but I'm in the tiny minority as far as that goes, because they are catchy and everything like that. So that's just, it's whatever grabbed you, right? I mean, I was in the minority as far as Phantom of the Paradise last week. So again, There you go. I don't have a favorite. I think they're all equally good and well written, but just not for me.
Very cool. Well, and by the way, the funny thing is, Julia and I watch a lot of movies together, but she cannot stand cats, and I'm a big fan of cats. So that's
There's
just
good
the way
stuff in there. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like everything like about it, but there's a lot of parts of cats I actually really enjoy.
No, to make matters worse, he has gotten my children completely addicted to cats. Not only has he given them the CD and have them memorize all the songs, but he also bought them the DVD. So now, like they like sing it all the time. To me, and I know this is like what I was saying about how we get off track and talk about this, but to me, cats, like the songs, especially that Jellicle Cat song, all it says in my mind is Jellicle Cats over and over and over. So I just go around singing. When they sing it, I just go around going Jellicle Cats, Jellicle Cats, Jellicle Cats, Jellicle Cats, Jellicle Cats, Jellicle Cats, and I just do that all. And they're like, that's not how it goes. And then they sing it. I'm like, that's how it sounds to me.
And eventually, this is how Jason has these unwitting palms. They're like, oh no, your mom would really enjoy it. You know, you're like, why didn't you do the dishes? And then later on, he's like, hey kids, your mom. Guess what? I think your mom would really like it if you played cats.
Well, you know, at dinner, the funny thing is at dinner we basically play Pandora stations all the time, and but the girls are now all into like various flavors of Broadway, you know, half of which bug Julia to no end, you know. So we listen to a lot of Cats and Thoroughly Modern Millie and yeah, luckily I still have my really grisly Euro horror to fall back on if I feel myself getting too
gay. That's what we're looking for.
Oh man.
All right. My final thoughts here is, you know, this is totally a movie worth seeing at least once, because any movie where I'm watching something and suddenly I step back and go, whoa, I cannot believe I'm seeing this. I felt that way about Watchmen, you know, when suddenly I see them go down into the tunnels that Night Owl has, and he has the, you know, his sort of Night Owl flyer thing down there, and it looked like this thoroughly realized world that I'd only seen previously described in the comics. Same thing here. When they go down and there's the gondolas and the candles and all of that stuff, I'm like, wow, this is neat. You must see this movie at least once, but there's clearly a lot of potentiality to do a better version once they get the energy together to actually mount a better version. But I think there's a lot of great stuff here, and we've talked about a lot of it that is certainly beautiful to look at, and some of it's even a little bit chilling. My favorite piece is probably The Point of No Return, which is the piece that's played during the staging of the imaginary operetta Don Juan Triumphant, which is the opera that Eric the Phantom writes. He writes an opera for his beloved Christine to star in, and then he ends up killing the main performer so that he can take the stage and star in it too, which is great. I love that that's his supervillain plan. And you know, and that's done in this really great scene that involves a lot of paper flames and stuff. Good looking stuff. I really like this. So I think you should definitely check this one out. Let's come around again to do endorsements. In fact, let's start with it was Julia, Drew, and Tony, and then me. Julia, endorsements?
Oh, I can't think of anything right now. My brain is fried. So just whatever you guys say, I will endorse that.
All right, very good. Drew, do you have any endorsements for us this week?
2 endorsements. First off, last week I rented 7 Psychopaths on DVD, which is a crime movie, and it is every bit as bombastically violent as the title 7 Psychopaths would allow you to think. But oddly, it is also incredibly heartwarming, and one of the best movies I've seen about writing in a while. It's one of the best movies I've seen about male friendship in a while, and it's actually one of there's brief parts of it that are incredibly illuminating on marriage at times. So it is an incredibly quirky film, but I highly recommend it. Christopher Walken, who might be the quintessential movie psychopath, of our day, puts in a very surprising performance. And I just, if you like crime movies at all, I think, and most people who like horror films usually like crime movies as well. I think you should go give this a rent. My second endorsement is an endorsement that Tony will also no doubt. For the second week in a row, I am plugging Punk vs. Rockabilly 3. That is March 10th during South by Southwest at Flamingo Cantina with the Wild Frenzies, the Lucky Odds, our very own Tony Savaggio in Picari Shred, our frequent guest host Jamie Barr in Danger Cakes, the Buzz Killers, and Deuce Coupe. It is a free show. That is 6 bands, free show, South by Southwest, from 7 at night to 2 in the morning. Come on down.
Wow. Yeah, we're learning a whole slew of Japanese punk songs just for this show. So, awesome stuff. Wild Guitar Wolf comes in. Balzac, who did a split with the Misfits and heavily endorsed by the Misfits, among others. It's going to be pretty cool.
I'm excited about. I'm excited to see Picari Shred. I met the lead singer back in October when Tony and I did our signing at Tribe, and she was very nice, and I just like the concept for the band, so I was happy to get them involved with this.
Yeah, it's going to be rad.
Very cool. Tony, you have any endorsements this week?
For my birthday, I actually got the soundtrack to Barbarian Sound Studio, which I recommended a while back, and I have to check and see if it ever came out on DVD or Blu-ray here in the States. But
by the way, happy birthday, Tony! Yesterday was Tony's birthday.
Oh, thanks.
I know we're so happy that you would spend part of your birthday with us on. Well, I mean, certainly in preparation for this show, it means a lot to us.
Oh yeah, it was fun. I mean, But the soundtrack is really good. It does feature a lot of clips from the movie, like vocalizations and speech parts and stuff like that. So it's kind of, if you're not in it for the cinematic experience, it's kind of weird.
Bavarian Sound Studio. That was the horror movie you talked about. That was about. It's about a sound engineer, and it's a thriller of sorts, right?
Right. It's in.
Yeah.
He may be in a real giallo.
Man, I want to see that movie.
He may be in hell. He could be. It's a really weird movie, a very, very divisive movie from Fantastic Fest.
Is it on DVD yet, or is it going to be on DVD? Or
it was out in the UK. I need to check and see if it came out here. But the soundtrack is out now, and it has some of the best stuff that's not Goblin that I've heard in quite a while. Some of the best. I think there's even a track called Goblin. And yeah, it's not an easy listen in some ways because or you can put it in iTunes and you can take out all the or whatever your player of choice and take out all the parts that are people talking and stuff like that. But it's pretty rad, and the opening credits and I should post them again if I haven't already, to Barbarian Sound Studio. They have the movie they're making is called The Equestrian Vortex, and it's a pitch perfect title sequence to a movie that I kind of wish was being made, that actually got made, because it looks to be every bit the giallo that we would want, if you enjoy that sort of thing. And I think the soundtrack is done. A famous band, if I remember, I didn't personally know them until the soundtrack. I think it's Broadcast. And I knew people who were like, holy moly, they did that. So there's some draw there. Like I said, I somehow missed them and why that's awesome. But now I should check out more of their stuff because.
And I should correct myself. It's not I keep saying it wrong. It's not Bavarian. It's Barbarian.
Yeah.
This word that nobody knows, but it's Barbarian, like Berber.
Right.
B-E-R-B-E-R.
And it's a really weird, really slow movie, but the pieces that are, what it probably was like to make those movies in the 70s, yeah, I think it captures that spirit perfectly. Whether or not you're in it by the end, that was I think some of the most divisive stuff. But I really like the soundtrack a lot, especially the Equestrian Vortex opening theme, which is just amazing. Like I said, I'll have to post that to the Castle Dracula podcast page because I think it's awesome.
That's a great idea. That's great. I've been extremely busy in the past week, so I haven't watched anything new. I've been doing this thing where I've been emptying out a lot of collections I have and getting rid of a lot of books. So I prune out and keep just the ones that I really care about, and the same thing with DVDs. And one thing I've made sure to do, though, and keep in the DVDs is I'm a big sucker for, if you go to Best Buy or Walmart or any of those, and you spend like $5 or $8, a lot of times they'll sell these collections of movies that they believe that they're ripping you off by charging you $8 to give you like 30, essentially like public domain or gray market movies that are all like Italian horror films from the 70s and stuff. I love this because it's one of the few places to get this stuff, and so I one thing I'm definitely going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is cracking out several of these collections, and they're all exactly the same, and just watching my way through these grindhouse 60s and 70s like Jess Franco movies. So that's my semi-bizarre endorsement right now that came up while I was cleaning off my shelves is go out and look for collections of horror movies that they have at Best Buy that will include a lot of like Italian stuff you've never heard of.
A lot of those will end up in half-price books sometimes as well.
That's right.
So I found that they're getting a deal. They didn't sell that well, so they get boxes of them, and I found a few of those there. So
and they're great. I mean, they truly are because I've gotten so much inspiration out of for like stuff I'm writing from watching some of these really obscure horror movies that sometimes the worst horror movie can actually inspire you to do something really interesting because it'll basically, the fact that it's bad or forgotten means that nobody's quoting it, so it introduces new stuff into your artistic vocabulary in a sense. So anyway, I am so excited. This was a really great 48th episode of the Castle Dracula podcast. We have one more week of our musical horror retrospective, and then we start another retrospective, which we have not announced yet. But we have a couple of really cool retrospectives lined up. At least one of them, and if not both, will be super exciting. I'm actually excited about both of them, but we haven't announced either yet. Okay, that's it. Please like us on Facebook, leave comments, like us on iTunes, subscribe, send our links to everybody, and if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear them. Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate everything that anybody has ever written about us.
Absolutely.
And I will see you guys. Yes.
It was nice.
I'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Night.